if we could address you directly right now.
Everything comes full circle.
That's number one.
I don't tell him what questions to ask me.
There are a lot of people around town that have the same question.
Brush my teeth. I'm going to get washed in the morning.
I can't confirm or deny.
You know, just keep going a little bit longer here, Mike. Keep going a little bit longer.
Radio. Tomorrow's broadcasting stars today. Broadcasting live from the campus of Syracuse University. This is Newhouse Afternoon.
Welcome to Newhouse Afternoon on ESPN 97.7 and on Twitch at QSportsTalk.com. My name is Cedric Derecho, and I'm here with Teddy Caputo and Jack Ziskin. Teddy, Jack, how are we doing today?
Doing pretty good. Just another week talking sports, getting towards the end of the semester.
Just another week? Just another week? When Cedric's Eagles won a Super Bowl, we were talking about it 2 weeks later. My Gators win a national championship on Monday, and it's just another week? Walter Clayton Jr., baby.
It's not just another week for you.
It is not just another week for me. 2 big comebacks for the Florida Gators. I had made 18 brackets. All 18 had Florida winning. And I just want to take this time to air my grievances with Cedric Derecho, because Cedric, throughout this entire tournament, has been picking the team, or rather telling me that he believed the team Florida was playing at any given point, whether it was UConn, St. John's, who didn't even make it past the round of 32, Houston, didn't matter. Whoever Florida was playing, he said the other team would win at every turn. So I just want to thank Cedric Derecho for causing me some mental anguish on that.
I thought you said you weren't going to mention the 18 brackets.
I did say that, and then I thought to myself, I'm not pretending to be objective. I mean, you know, it's Florida. I love Florida. That's my alma mater.
You know what? I tip my hat off to Florida. You know, me and Teddy both had St. John winning this tournament, and we saw how that turned out. That got extinguished pretty quickly. But I will give credit to Florida. Walter Clayton Jr., just a spectacular tournament he's had. Spectacular second half he had to rebound off of that, less than, subpar performance, really, in the first half.
Yeah. No, in order to survive in this tournament, you just have to overcome adversity. If you're not shooting well, your defense has to show up. That's not the case of what happened for St. John's in that game versus Arkansas. They basically gave up in the last few minutes of the game. Houston didn't give up in the Final Four. That's how they punched their ticket, coming back against Duke down 7. And then Florida also down in multiple games against UConn and against Auburn. And they fought their way back, just stayed consistent on the defensive end. They did the same thing against Houston and really just lights out performance. Well, I shouldn't say lights out, but just like really dominant performance at the end for Florida. And what St. John's needed out of R.J. Lewis Jr. in the game he struggled in, they got out of Walter Clayton Jr. from Florida.
Well, I think part of this too, and the reason I touch on Florida is, Syracuse has been making moves in the portal. And I think the number one thing I want to emphasize of what they've done is they've realized what the Gators realized. Offense, we all know that doesn't win championships. Defense, the old saying, defense wins championships. It doesn't hold true anymore. It's about possession. It's about your efficiency. It's a numbers game. It comes down to how many threes you hit at whatever clip. That's what it comes down to.
Well, both teams were 25% or less shooting from 3 in this game. So it really came down to nitty-gritty defense.
It did.
And really who could hold out in the end of the game.
But, and this is the key part, in the biggest moments of the game, the most efficient shooters in college basketball took over. That's Walter Clayton Jr. And that's my point, is that what I really like that Syracuse has done in the portal is, first off, they're acquiring guys multiple years of eligibility. It's not a bunch of one-and-dones like we had last year. And more importantly, he's acquiring players that are efficient, and I think that brings us to Nathan George, Cedric.
Yeah, why don't we move right into the Syracuse portal talk, because that's what we had up next. So we have, obviously, we talked last week about some guys that left SU in the portal. Petar Majstorovic joining them. And apparently Eddie Lampkin now is trying to come back, and Lucas Taylor, who don't technically have any eligibility. They're hoping to get a waiver. We'll see what happens with them. But in addition to William Kyle III, you mentioned Nathan George, the guard from Georgia Tech, averaging 12 a game, 34% from 3. ACC best, 6.5 assists, Jack? Is that what you wrote down there?
6.5 assists per game. He had over 200 on the season, so that was good for the lead in the ACC.
Yeah.
He had a over 2-to-1 turnover ratio. So we had some games from Jaquan Carlos this year where he was getting a good number of assists, but the problem was the turnover ratio wasn't always the best.
Yeah.
And the other problem was Carlos was not a great three-point shooter. Look, George isn't lights out, but Judah Mintz wasn't fantastic from three on paper either.
Yep. Well, speaking of lights-out three-point shooters, they also got Nate Kings, 6'5" guard from Oregon State, who was one of the top shooters in the nation, about 45% from three. And then to round it out, Ibrahim Soare, who's a 6'9" forward/center from Georgia Tech. Cedric, let's start with you. What do you think of these new additions in the portal for Syracuse? Does it make them competitive this year with the additions of Kiyan Anthony and Sadiq White? And what other pieces do they need?
Well, they definitely need a center. We know that Lampkin leaving. They definitely need a true rebounder, defender in the paint. But
was Lampkin either of those things?
Well, that can be debated. That can definitely be debated. The question that I have, though, is that what is this starting five going to be? Because you bring in George from Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
Had a pretty good season coming in. He's not coming here to come off the bench. He's coming here to start.
Yeah, that's true. I definitely think some of the transfers you bring in who are scoring double digits a game, they're looking for opportunities here at Syracuse. And I think, Jack, you mentioned before the show, Kiyan Anthony has said that he's willing to not just be a one-and-done player. Like, he would play next year given the shot. So he may not be in the starting lineup. But, Jack, you have a very interesting starting lineup. I want to hear from you on this.
Well, first off, I'm going to turn that around on you because you're the one actually who told me that Kiyan Anthony is willing to stay multiple years. You're the one who read that, and I just want to give you, your flowers, for lack of a better term. Look, I don't think my starting lineup is as unique as you would think. I don't think that Kyle or Soare have necessarily proven enough to be a starting center. I think they're still looking for somebody in the portal that can fill that void. But as the roster is currently constructed, one of your guards is probably coming off the bench. I don't think that's going to be Kings because, like Cedric said, he probably came here to start. His NIL valuation, I don't remember it off the top of my head, but it's not cheap. And I think the most likely outcome here is that you start George at the 1. Starling moves back to the 2. You have Kings, a 45% three-point shooter, at the 3. Sadiq White at the 4. And Donnie Freeman at the 5.
Yeah, that's a small lineup, though, Jack. You think that they're going to try
Freeman's 6'10". He might be 190 pounds, but he's pretty tall.
He's definitely undersized, though.
But he's 6'9", I think. I don't think he's 6'10". I mean, we did have Lampkin, who was maybe a little undersized, but he was, bigger body down there in the paint.
I think 6'10" in shoes. I think you're right. And he was listed at 6'9", 205 for this season.
Yeah.
Freeman.
Yeah.
He's absolutely undersized.
So, as much as those may be the 5 best guys on the court, I think you need some more size in there, especially going up against the ACC where they're going to have some teams with some size. So, I'm thinking if they get somebody in the transfer portal, a true center, that guy's got to make the starting lineup.
I agree. I also think that, Kyle's 6'9", 230, had some great numbers at South Dakota State with the Jackrabbits. So I don't want to discount his impact. Soare is going to be a sophomore who didn't really see much time as a freshman. So we really don't know what we have in him yet, in my opinion. But at the very least, I think we're going to see Freeman, and I don't think he'll be the starting center when the season actually rolls around, but at this point in time, I think he is. I think he sees some time as a small ball 5 because of the fact that Syracuse is valuing 2 things, and they both tie back to Florida. Possession, shooting. Florida shot the ball really well. They were very good at possessing the ball. They were very athletic. And even though they didn't necessarily have a true rim protector at times, at the end of the day, who came out on top? It was the Gators. And I think Coach Red Autry is following that formula.
Yeah, but you say defense doesn't win championships, but that was a heck of a possession played by Walter Clayton Jr. in the last. But Houston didn't even get up a shot.
I think it's an analytics-driven game, so I think breaking it down into offense and defense is pointless. And I know there's a lot of older fans that don't like that.
Game.
A block won it, yes, exactly. I agree. Possession, agreed. Possession. Again, it's all semantics, and that's kind of the point I'm trying to make here, is that it's about efficiency. It's not about offense or defense. The team that scores the most points, believe it or not, in the history of basketball, the team that scores more points has never lost a game. And that's why I say it's about possession, because the more possessions you have, the more efficient you are shooting-wise. That means at the end of the game, it's easier for you to limit opposing teams' stars. And if things don't go right for you, like they didn't for Walter Clayton Jr. in the first half, if you limit the mistakes, if you limit the damage, which Florida was still down 12, I'm not going to pretend it was all rainbows and butterflies, but they were able to overcome that because they did enough. They did enough to keep themselves in it. Well, and that's the point I'm getting at.
I'm pretty sure they forced 12 turnovers against Houston in the second half, which was the most in any half that Houston had. They only had 2 turnovers, I believe, in the first half. So just got them off of their game and off of their rhythm. There was a 9-10 minute stretch where Houston only had 1 field goal, or maybe 2 field goals. So they really got knocked off their rhythm and couldn't get back. That was when they had the lead of 12, and that lead got cut down to like 4 with 7-6 minutes left in the game. So it was very manageable for Florida at that point.
But I'll say this is what Houston does in the NCAA tournament. I mean, they win rock fights. That's the name of the game. I mean, the offense has always been questionable all year long, and then they've been a defensive pillar throughout the college basketball season. Yeah. So, I mean, they kind of just stuck to the game plan that they've been rolling with all season long, and it nearly paid off. They just couldn't hit a shot in the second half.
And we're coming up on the break here, so I'm going to keep this short. But Houston was in foul trouble a lot of that game, and there were probably some calls in the first half of how physical they played it where Florida definitely wanted a couple of those. I'm not saying they should have gotten them, but they definitely wanted it. So I think that accounts for a lot of the quote-unquote defensive presence. I think they play very physically. So in 1984, that was how basketball was played when they made their last national championship before this year.
Yeah, well,
it's not how it's played this year, and that's why they lost.
And speaking of defense, maybe we could talk a little bit more about this as we go into the break, but I want to hear from you guys before, really quick. Syracuse used to be primarily a 2-3 zone team. With the guys that they're bringing in and possibly another center, do you think Syracuse should maybe return to the 2-3 zone defense? There were some times they played 2-3 zone that looked pretty good compared to their man-to-man. What are your thoughts?
Well, we can't wait to hear if you're watching with us on Q Sports Talk. Personally, I don't want to speak for Mike Waters, but I think he's ready to see the 2-3 zone die, and so am I.
What are your thoughts on that, Cedric? 2-3?
I say roll with it.
Yeah.
I say roll with it. You know, there was a lot of question marks coming into the offseason, and with everybody and their mother entering the transfer portal. But I think Syracuse did a decent job filling some of those holes and still work to do at the center. Do you guys think, last thing here before we go to the break, do you think that this team is competitive?
I think
next season?
I think as soon as they get that true center, they can be a competitive team because they really do have a lot of depth. They do have about 10 guys that could truly see minutes on the floor and really help space out this team. And they have wing size, maybe not height, but wing size. William Kyle with a 7'3" wingspan. I think that could really help, especially if you do go back to a 2-3 zone defense.
I think they're very switchable. I think that negates the need for the zone, and I think I've said my piece on it.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, we are going to go to the break. Please stick with us. We'll be back with more Sports Talk, SU and New York, coming up after this short 4-minute break. Cool. So,
you didn't say the name of the thing, but it's fine.
Sorry. Yeah.
I was trying to get us to the break right at 12, and then you guys kind of... I was trying. I didn't mean to paint you into a corner, but that was the goal.
We're making great time. So,
exactly.
But we want to hear from you guys, your thoughts on Syracuse basketball. Are the new transfers coming in, the roster that's being built right now at Syracuse, is it more competitive than last year? How are we feeling? Do you think we need that true center in order to be really a competitive team this year?
I think you really, and while we wait for those comments, I think we really have to look at how Florida won that game, right? I mean, they didn't exactly have the biggest physical presence in the paint. You know, the guys that were scoring in the paint were their power forwards. It was about wing depth and length. I mean, they didn't have a 7-footer in their starting lineup. They didn't. The closest to a 7-footer, I think he might have eclipsed it, is Mika Handlockton, who's coming back from an injury he suffered in last year's SEC championship game. He was supposed to redshirt this year, and he came back because they had injuries to their front court. That's why he was back. He's listed at 7'1", but he came off the bench. I don't think we should be focusing on size as much as we think, because even though college basketball is driven by bigs, sometimes that just means you need a really good 4.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that even Houston was not the biggest team. Like, they didn't have a ton of size on their team, but they had intensity and they had great defense. You know, their tallest guy was 6'11", and he was a freshman. He didn't really see the floor that much. Juwan Roberts, who really kind of did play the center for them, 6'8". So, like, yeah, I guess you don't need. And he was a little bit bigger, though, 235 pounds. He was a big body down there.
Gee, that doesn't remind me of anybody.
What, Eddie Lampkin?
Kyle.
Oh, William Kyle.
Yeah, I was trying to throw that to you. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, that's the thing. Like, William Kyle probably is the closest thing we do have to a true center right now. Because he's 6'9", probably around 235. I don't know exactly. But a 7'3" wingspan. I mean, you know, he's got hops. The guy's athletic.
He does.
So he definitely could, you know, maybe play with the centers in terms of defensively. Down on the block is a little different. I don't know in terms of how our paint game's going to be.
He's a good shot blocker, though.
Oh, yeah, good shot blocker. Defensively, I think that's a good thing for us.
And, I mean, you're just trying to move him around the dunker spot, right? He's pretty mobile. He plays back to the basket a little bit, but I don't think he's going to be asked to post up as much at Syracuse. The guy I always come back to for Florida was Ruben Chinyelu, who averaged approximately 20 fouls per 40. And I'm saying that a little sarcastically, but not that far from the truth if you watched it. He's not the perfect player, but he does bring that energy and physicality you need. And while I don't want to pencil a guy like William Kyle into my starting lineup, I don't. I don't want to say. Let me rephrase. It's not that I feel uncomfortable with him starting. It's that I don't want him to be the starter unless he earns it over somebody who has a higher pedigree. And I know that sounds counterproductive, but I think you need somebody who's a little bit more established, has a little bit more of a presence, and you know that track record you need, because you're going to have a young team next year. And if you're trying to win college basketball games, well, George is a junior, Starling is a senior, Kings is a junior. Get a nice sophomore junior big that has legitimate Power 5, or at the very least high mid-major experience.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to look and see who the best. Oh, okay. I just don't know who the top centers are available still in the portal. We'll have to figure that out.
We'll have to wait and see.
You can hear everything. You can hear everything. Okay.
Broadcasting live from the campus of Syracuse University, this is Newhouse Afternoon.
Welcome back to Newhouse Afternoon on ESPN 97.7 and on QSportsTalk.com. This hour of Newhouse Afternoon is powered by Drivers Village Cicero. Go to dvoffers.com for more info. Guys, a lot of news in the NBA yesterday.
Yeah.
Coach Mike Malone, the 10-year head coach of the Denver Nuggets, championship winner in 2023, gone.
Yeah. No, that's shocking because, I mean, the Nuggets, it's no secret, I guess, have not been playing up to their full potential coming off the All-Star break, 11-13 since the All-Star break. And that Western Conference is really tight. They might slip into a play-in spot. Despite Jokic's record-setting season, 30-point triple-double averager. You know, I am kind of shocked, though, because of the success he brought the team, won their only championship. But I guess sometimes it goes beyond just the success and goes more towards the culture. Jack, what are your thoughts, man?
Well, I think we should address the New York roots to this story. You know, Michael Malone, son of Brendan Malone, you know, a former basketball coach in his own right. Spent some time with the Raptors, the Cavaliers. But the big thing, and obviously then you go to his son, who's from Queens, spent 10 years there. And the real reason all this went down is because he couldn't stay on the same page with his GM, right?
Yeah.
In Booth. And, the interesting wrinkle to this is we have another New York tie to this story. So, while it took me approximately an hour to get through the two Malones, there was also Jalen Pickett out of Rochester. Former Siena College player, former Penn State Nittany Lion. A couple games back, had a triple-double, 17, 11, and 10. Booth wanted Pickett in the lineup more. But Malone and Booth, they don't see eye to eye. Malone keeps rolling out Russell Westbrook, which hasn't always worked at the end of games, with Jamal Murray out. And that ends up being, that spat and that management of Pickett ends up being what costs both of them their jobs. And I hope Malone does the right thing for himself and takes a year off from coaching to reflect. Because we've seen coaches rush back into this, and it doesn't work out for them. I think he needs a year to reflect, regroup, and I think whatever team gets him next is going to be very lucky to have him, but it shouldn't be immediate.
I was going to say he's probably going to come off the block less than a year because he's a very valuable coach. But Cedric, what are your thoughts on what Jack said with Jalen Pickett? Do you think that he should have seen more minutes on the court than Russell Westbrook in those late game situations?
Well, hindsight is 20/20. We saw Russell Westbrook, for lack of, there's no other better way to put it here, no sugarcoating. He choked a couple of games down the stretch for the Denver Nuggets. And so in hindsight, yeah, you can say that you could have had, Pickett out there.
You could have said it in foresight. He's been doing this since he left Oklahoma City. He's not the player he once was. And I understand there's no Jamal Murray, Cedric, but I got to be honest. I think Booth had a point here. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, there was a stretch of time where Russell Westbrook was really jiving with Jokic on the floor, but it seems like that honeymoon phase is evaporating. So, you do might need to make a change to switch things up, especially, as your season is kind of sliding away, whereas, you could be a lock for a 3 seed or a 4 seed in the West, and now you're looking at potentially being an 8 and having to play your way in. So,
well, I mean, let's address the standings just a little bit, because I just think that for me, and this is not the first time we've seen it this season, there's a lot of chaos. Oh, that's an understatement. There's a lot of chaos in the NBA this year. And then there's an absolute logjam from 3 to 8. The Lakers at 48 and 31. You got the Clippers, Nuggets, Warriors, and Grizzlies all at 47 and 32. And then the Timberwolves 46 and 33. You got 2 games separating 3 to 8. So I can understand the worry, but do you let your coach go like that 3 games before the playoffs? And then, again, they're not the only one. The Memphis Grizzlies, who I just said 47 and 32. They're right there, and they let Taylor Jenkins go with only 9 games before the playoffs, give or take. So what do you think about firing these coaches this late into the season?
Yeah, that's kind of tough because both of these coaches are the winningest coaches in their franchise's history. So they do bring success to their teams that they coach on. And I mean, by no stretch of the imagination are they out of it at all. They're not. They're in playoff contention. But I will say that reports have come out that both of these coaches were just losing the locker room, perhaps losing the management, and just not getting their teams under control, winning towards the end of the season. The Grizzlies lost 9 straight games against winning teams by an average of 13 points a game down the stretch, and that's not a recipe for winning playoff basketball. So they were maybe looking to switch things up, change the culture there. And the Nuggets, like I said, 11 and 13 in the since the All-Star break, they're looking to change things up as well. As Jokic, who's pretty calm, has been visibly upset on the sideline. That is not normal for them, and they felt like they needed to make a change.
And he's been frustrated with the team defense, which might sound a little outlandish to some fans. He's not the best defensive player. But here's what it really comes down to. This is a star-driven league, right? And the reality is the great head coaches aren't the ones necessarily who are elevating stars. Stars are stars. There's just some things you can't teach. But what you can do as a coach is put your stars in the best position to win. And that's what Malone did 2 years ago. Now, you can argue that roster was far better constructed than this one. And I'm one of those people who would argue that the roster construction really did let him down. But you got to make the best of it. They weren't able to. And in regards to letting Jenkins and Malone go with the season almost over, I'm going to lean on a Bill Belichick philosophy, a Patriots philosophy. It's better to let a player go a year early than a year late. I think that should apply to coaches too. And if you're going to lose in the first round anyway, you might as well see if you're going to spark something. If you really think that's the only outcome, which to be honest, it kind of felt like it was.
So I don't know about that with the Nuggets, though.
Yeah, I
didn't have the Nuggets losing in the first round in my
Yeah, I mean
my
the
bingo
way
card, so.
the way that
Hang on,
Jokic
let me
is
add to
playing, they could spark something and perhaps make a run for the finals.
Is that a winning basketball move to let your coaches go that late into the season, though?
Well, let me ask you.
I can understand wanting to start a spark, but how are you going to build team chemistry with three games left, 9 games left?
I got 2 words for you. Actually, it's really a name. Kevin Keats was on the hot seat at NC State, goes on a Cinderella run. They bring him back, and the Wolfpack falls off. He's fired, just like it was projected to happen a year after that Final Four run. That is the argument we're making here. Maybe they could have gone on a Cinderella run. You're not wrong. You take that chance. But the reality is, we've seen coaches go on Cinderella runs, not only in the NBA, but in the college ranks, and then next season's a disaster, and you have to let them go anyway.
Well, the thing is that both of these coaches were very winning coaches, and then teams let them go. And I think basically the mindset in terms of the management and ownership is that these teams are valuing the current rosters they have more than the coaches that are on top of those rosters. And so if they value the rosters, they want to see if they can generate a spark. Because the Nuggets, I mean, yeah, they've been playing lackluster, but they're getting a record season out of their star, one that can really push them into the playoffs. And, you know, with the exception of the Thunder, like, any team really could have a shot out of the Western Conference. You know, the Thunder, I think, are absolutely the favorite coming out of the West, but any other team could challenge them. I even think the Clippers have a good shot. They're 13-3 in their last 16 games and are gelling at the right time.
Watch out for the Warriors, too, with Jimmy Butler.
Mm-hmm.
The Warriors would be the one I'd watch out for. And I absolutely agree that, you know, they're prioritizing stars over players. And I think there's another team that's going to be having that same conversation pretty soon, and that's the New York Knicks. Another tight loss to the Celtics in overtime. Carmelo Anthony was not thrilled on the sideline, if you guys saw any of that. And it comes down to the minutes conversation we've had with Tom Thibodeau for years, right?
Yeah.
Very successful, might play his stars a little bit too much. Mitchell Robinson was coming off the bench, played 16 minutes. And this is a stat line I think we should look at. 16 minutes, 7 rebounds, 4 of them offensive rebounds. A steal, an assist, a block, no fouls. 4 points. He played 16 minutes. That was the second highest off the bench to Miles McBride, who played 21. All of your starters played 38 minutes or more, including overtime.
Yeah.
And 2 of them, OJ Anunoby and Josh Hart, went a combined 0 of 9 from 3. How is that a productive way to run your basketball team?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the Knicks are really relying, like they live and die by the 3, and they are establishing themselves more in the paint now that you have a healthier backcourt. Now you have, Precious Achiuwa didn't even see the court.
Exactly.
I don't know why he didn't see the court. He's healthy now. You should get him established for the playoffs, and 41 and 43 minutes for Karl Anthony. OG Anunoby and Karl Anthony Towns respectively. That's a lot,
Yeah, but Towns had a spectacular game, though.
Oh, yeah. No, he had a great game. So, not arguing that. But in terms of load management, that's been an issue with Thibodeau. And he's got a healthy backcourt. It's not like last year where they were struggling with injuries and you have to keep those guys on the court. He's got options that he can use.
Tibbs has so much of a focus on perfection almost. He wants it to be perfect every single possession, and you love that. But you don't want to run your guys into the ground, and while I am someone who has defended him in the past when he hasn't had options, I don't think that's really the case here. Precious Achiuwa isn't a perfect player, but he is a player. Cameron Payne isn't a perfect player. 14 minutes is probably around right for him, but he's a player. I think that New York, come this offseason, I think that you're going to be hearing the name Jay Wright a lot. I think that there's going to be a change at head coach. I think Mikal Bridges, he's due for an extension. I think he will extend. And I think Leon Rose, a gift from the basketball gods to the New York Knicks, will bring in the former Villanova head coach.
Wow. That's a hot take, but not a bad take if you have a lot of the Villanova guys on the team, honestly.
Yeah, talk about the Nova Knicks, will be even more so. But the fact of the matter is, I think that was just foreshadowing for what we might see in the playoffs.
No doubt.
I mean, the Knicks haven't been able to get past the second round. Tibbs, as a head coach, hasn't really been able to get past the second round. And so we've seen the philosophy. We know that Tibbs is old school. We know that he plays his guys big minutes. And we've seen it way too often where his guys get injured, wear down in the playoffs. We saw it last year in the Pacers series. Can this Knicks team beat the Celtics in a best-of-7 series? My answer to that question right now is no.
Yeah.
And you mentioned getting past the second round. Do you know the last time he got past the second round? His first year as a head coach in the playoffs. You got to go back to 2010, 2011, losing in the conference finals. That's the year Derrick Rose tore his ACL, changing the history of the NBA forever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, four
they haven't been back.
Yeah, 4 consecutive semifinal round losses when he's reached there.
Yeah, and it's going to be a dogfight.
That's 4 in Chicago.
It's going to be a dogfight in that second round, too, because they're most likely going to face the Celtics unless the Celtics melt down in the first round. Then after that, you're going to possibly face the Cavs in the Eastern Conference Finals. So, those are 2 series. Like, I just don't see the Knicks getting out of the Eastern Conference. Like, I just don't see it happening.
Well, maybe.
I honestly don't see anybody beating Boston, period. Despite the record of the Cavs.
What about you mean in the East?
In the East.
Because if we're doing championship predictions, I think this is SGA's year.
I mean, they have a very complete roster. They're healthy. I could see them making a run.
They have a stock ton of draft picks, too, going forward.
Yeah.
They've built that team sweet. Me as a Brooklyn Nets fan, I could only hope that that's how they're building that team going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're probably not getting Giannis like it's been rumored. If that's the case, you're not trading for Giannis. You're waiting and you're making more trades.
I don't think Nets fans even want that move necessarily. The Nets have the second most draft picks, the second most draft capital in the NBA over the next 7 seasons. So they have a chance to really build this thing in a similar way to what the Thunder have done in Oklahoma City. But the question is, do they sell out again for stars? Because we've seen that formula before.
No.
And where it hasn't worked out, and we know it hasn't always worked out, Brooklyn being the best example of that. But then also the Phoenix Suns, who are on pace to not even make the play-in with Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal.
Yeah, no.
Bradley Beal.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing I'll say before break is that the Nets do have draft capital, but they're also they're down on cap space. So they have to do something about that. They may have to deal some of those picks in order to free up cap space. They may lose one of their star guys too, like Cam Johnson or Cam Thomas, in order to make room.
They'll probably end up trading Johnson, I think. They'll be fine on cap space with some expiring contracts. It won't be pretty, but they'll get the job done.
Yeah.
And that should do it for New York basketball.
Yeah, after this short 4-minute break, we'll be back with Q's football talk and the NFL draft. You're listening to Newhouse Afternoon on ESPN 97.7. Watch us on Twitch at qsportstalk.com.
We're cutting NHL and...
Oh, yeah. I mean, we just didn't have time for NHL in that block.
We could still touch upon it in the last block if we go.
If we have time, yeah.
I'm just asking if we think we're going to do 12 minutes on football, and I know I came in before he said we're clear, so I'm sorry about that.
Oh, you're good.
McCord, Allen, I mean, is anybody on this list going to be more than the day 3 pick? I don't think anybody on this list, except for McCord, who I think should be day 2 pick.
The third round is day 2, right?
Or day 3, sorry, day 3.
Yeah, the third round is day 2, though, if he gets selected in the third.
I would say maybe he could be a day 2 pick late. I don't know that it happens. I don't think he's getting a fair shake.
Day 2 is just second and third, right? Fourth round is day 3. Right?
Yeah, that's why I said I'm not sure there's anybody on this list who won't be more than a day 3 pick, and that's not a reflection on talent. It's not. But LaQuint Allen Jr. is very young, and I think in a really strong running back class, he hasn't gotten as much love as maybe a Braylon Allen did a year ago because of his youth. Mel Kiper Jr. is pretty high on him. I think there's a good reason for that. McCord was getting a lot of love as a quarterback from Kiper Jr., and then it seems like the people he was talking to started really pushing Tyler Shove, who is actually older than everybody sitting here right now. 25.5. So again,
I'm 27.
You should have just lied. We should have just gone with it. But and all jokes aside, he's basically Brandon Whedon.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a fair comparison.
Really
He's had a lot of injuries, too.
Really quick, for those that are on Twitch watching us on Q Sports Talk on the Twitch channel, leave us a comment because we're about to talk SU football, like the NFL draft landscape. What are your thoughts on, our guys going into the draft, the Syracuse guys, that is, I should say. Kyle McCord, Oronde Gadsden, LaQuint Allen, Fadil Diggs, Elijah Clark, all being projected to go on the board in some mock drafts. I think Elijah Clark in one by The Athletic was not projected to get drafted, but there's also a handful of guys too. Jackson Meeks, why am I forgetting his name?
Justin Barron.
Thank you. Justin Barron, Clarence Lewis, Marlo Wax. These guys are also declaring for the draft and are available.
Savion Washington, too, even though I don't think any member of that Syracuse offensive line necessarily did anything super impressive, he has the prototypical size at 6'8". For me personally, I think that Diggs really has the potential to be the real, maybe overlooked player in this group because the reason they got him from Texas A&M TAMU is because of the fact that they added Nick Scourton from Purdue in the portal. So Fran Brown sees an SEC rival with a pretty solid rotational defensive lineman, makes him a starter at Cuse. He was one of the fastest, I think second fastest defensive end at the Combine. I think there's a world where, at the very least, he's a rotational pass rusher, but there might be a world where he works his way into being a starting level player. He's just got a lot of attributes that aren't that common. Oronde Gadsden Jr., though, I think we talked about this before the show. That he reminds me of Isaiah Likely.
Yeah, he could be a very similar player, honestly, because he's kind of like a matchup nightmare, and we can talk more about that when we get there. But I'm looking at this.
We could have an even better preview in 2 weeks because our next show is the 23rd. The draft is the 24th.
Yeah, so we're gonna learn more about their draft stock, anyways. But and we can keep this one kind of light. Just initial thoughts. What other mock drafts you guys seeing? Because I'm seeing CBS Sports on that one. Nothing about Oronde Gadsden or LaQuint Allen.
Yeah, because they're projected day 3 right now.
Now I know, but this has all 7 rounds.
You can control F it and search.
That's what I did, and But do you have ESPN Plus, Jack?
I do, but they don't have. I don't think they have a 7 round.
Okay. We'll check on that as we come back.
Stock.com. Tomorrow's broadcasting stars today. Broadcasting live from the campus of Syracuse University. This is Newhouse Afternoon.
Welcome back to Newhouse Afternoon on ESPN 97.7 and on QSportsTalk.com. Guys, the NFL draft is 2 weeks away, Green Bay, Wisconsin, and there are a couple members of the Orange who are expected to be mostly day 3 picks, but maybe we have a couple sneak into day 2.
Yeah, Kyle McCord is obviously the name that everybody's looking at on the quarterback board in a quarterback class that is a little weaker, according to a lot of experts. Shedeur Sanders, he's projected to go as high as number 3, but could go as low as number 27, they're saying on some draft boards. Where I saw one mock draft where the Giants pick Travis Hunter with the 3rd pick, and then they trade for the 26th pick with the Saints to then draft Shedeur Sanders, which I don't think that's actually going to happen. But the point is that his scale on the board is so wide. It's not like he's going to be the 3rd pick or the 6th pick. He could drop all the way down. And when Shedeur Sanders is falling, other guys could be rising. Maybe Kyle McCord is one of those guys. I know the Cleveland Browns are pretty high on Kyle McCord. So if they don't end up striking a quarterback in the 1st round, he could go 2nd, 3rd round to Cleveland if they want to fill that gap. Deshaun Watson is obviously probably not going to play. But they also have Kenny Pickett, which how high are they on Kenny Pickett? I don't know. You could bring in someone like McCord who can actually compete for that job.
Well, going back to the Giants, let's just play a little bit of hypothetical here. Let's have some fun with this, Teddy. Think about it. They have Malik Neighbors, a stud at wide receiver. If you can get Travis Hunter, perhaps a generational talent who can play both sides of the ball, I'm not saying that the Giants are going to be, awful again for the next 2 years, but it's not out of the realm of possibility by any means.
Yeah.
So we'll humor me this. What if they draft Arch Manning number 1 overall in a couple of years?
Well,
and then you have Manning, Neighbors, and Hunter to build a dynasty going forward.
I'm glad you said a couple years, too, because he's not entering the draft this year. You heard it here first. He doesn't have enough starts.
No, absolutely not.
Next year's number 1 is Lenore Sellers, and I wish more people were talking about him instead of fawning over Arch Manning, who's going to be really good but needs time.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I'm sorry about that, guys. Continue.
No. I mean, I'm glad you mentioned that. You don't go out and sign 2 veteran quarterbacks like Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston if you plan on getting Shedeur Sanders. You just don't do that. So maybe you're bringing in Russell Wilson to try to compete. Maybe Jameis Winston sitting underneath him trains him up a little bit. Then Jameis takes over, and then you bring in a guy like Arch, who then could compete for the spot or just take it right over. But I agree, Jack. Like, maybe Arch goes next year, maybe he doesn't. But I do think that the Giants are waiting for Arch Manning.
I think that, in all honesty, I think that they've said that they aren't going to hand the job to Russell Wilson. I don't believe them. We're talking about Travis Hunter to the Giants. We're talking about Arch Manning, who, again, I think he's not going until 2027. Jets fans had their Manning moment with Peyton. When they thought they were getting Peyton, he said he was going back to school. That might be what Giants fans have to prepare for, so start studying up on Lenore Sellers. He's a really good quarterback out of South Carolina. But I think we're jumping the gun on Hunter here because, by all accounts, the Browns are really considering Hunter here because Abdul Carter, the outstanding edge rusher out of Penn State, he's been compared to Micah Parsons, and I think that's a fair comp. As someone who saw him in person, he's fantastic. Hunter is currently the slight favorite among experts because Carter has that foot injury.
Yeah, but they said that he's recovering from the injury.
They have.
So he should be okay. And just my real quick thought before we get back to some of the Syracuse guys is Abdul Carter. He's ranked number 1 on most boards for prospect coming out of the draft, and just top players. Why not put him on the other side of Myles Garrett, who you did just re-sign to a big contract? I think that is the no-brainer move for the Cleveland Browns, especially since you don't have it figured out at quarterback.
And I agree. And my philosophy is I know my offensive line isn't going to be great with a rookie left tackle, which they're going to have to grab in the second round. That's why I don't see them drafting a quarterback this year. They might even trade up to get one in the late first. The reason, and that would be my philosophy. I would say if I can't have a quarterback, nobody else in my division can have a quarterback, and I draft Abdul Carter and I send him after Joe Burrow. I agree with you. I'm just saying that right now a lot of the rumors are pointing to the fact they really like Hunter because they're not comfortable with their secondary and they're not comfortable with their receiving core. And in theory, that solves 2 birds, 1 stone.
Same with the Giants, though. They could use a number 2 receiver in Hunter, and they also need help at cornerback.
That's the best scenario for Hunter, I think, because Hunter can be. I don't know that he's your number 1 corner in New York. I'm not saying he wouldn't be based on talent, but I think Hunter wants to be a number 1 receiver and a number 2 corner.
Yeah.
Well, if the Giants and the Browns both want Hunter, is it possible that the Giants try to trade up to number 1 with Tennessee to get him? Because does Tennessee, I mean, they've been willing to shop that number 1 overall pick, but their asking price has just been too high. It hasn't been met yet.
They want like 2 firsts and Kayvon Thibodeau, and if they trade out of 1, then they're not getting Cam Ward. So if they really want Cam Ward, who I think we all know is pretty talented, that's not going to happen.
Well, no, I think if they trade down to 3, I think they very well still could get Cam Ward.
Cleveland takes him, I think, in that point. I think they'd have to take him at 2. He's talented enough to start right away. He's got a lot of games under his belt, and experience is king. That's why teams are considering Tyler Schaff out of Louisville, despite all the injuries and the fact he's 25 and a half years old. You don't normally use that 0.5, but those decimals become important right around April.
Well, guys, let's. What about some of the other guys that Syracuse has on the board? LaQuint Allen, Aronde Gadsden, Fadil Diggs, Elijah Clark. Looking like they're day 3 picks, but how are we feeling about them?
Well, I think Fadil Diggs, he definitely increased his draft stock with a spectacular performance at the NFL Combine. I think he had the second fastest 40 time.
Yeah.
So it's, there's a couple of guys who increased their stock throughout the season and increased it even more so through Combine and Pro Day. So in terms of who has the highest upside, though, although Diggs had a good showing, I still think Aronde Gadsden has the highest upside of all guys not named Kyle McCord.
Okay, yeah. So, who do you think could use Oronde Gadsden on their team? Because I think Jack, you were drawing comparisons to him over the break to Isaiah Likely. So, what team do you think could benefit right away with someone like Oronde Gadsden?
Well, with Gadsden, it's tricky because he's not a great blocker at this point. I don't know that he ever will be. He was recruited as a wide receiver, but he plays tight end because he's 6'5", right? Mm-hmm. And that's a great thing to have, but we've seen teams be very hesitant to use 12 personnel formations, 2 tight ends. Mm-hmm. We even see that in Vegas, where they spent a second-round pick, the first pick in the second round, no less, on Michael Mayer. They draft Brock Bowers a year later, and they still weren't using Mayer as much as some fans would have liked, to the point that his name's now in trade rumors. But I digress. I think that it really depends on who's drafting linemen on day 1 and 2. Those are the teams that are going to be looking at Oronde Gadsden. So I think the Jets, the Giants maybe, and the Bills. I think he's a fit for any of the 3 teams in New York. I think New England, while I think he'd be a good fit there, I don't know that Mike Vrabel's going to be in love with a guy who's not a great blocker. That could be a landing spot for Jackson Meeks, who's met with the Atlanta Falcons as a UDFA target, because he was a really good special teamer, especially at Georgia. So we know he's an NFL athlete, I think. Mm-hmm. I think, for me personally, I think Diggs might have the higher ceiling than Gadsden, though.
Mm. Yeah, and I mean, when I think of Fadil Diggs really quickly, I see one mock draft having him going 6th round to the Los Angeles Chargers, which I think is really interesting because the Los Angeles Chargers did just lose Joey Bosa, so they have a need to fill. And, I mean, Fadil Diggs, you're right. Maybe he is being undervalued in this draft class, and he's like a 3rd-round talent that could slide down to the 6th round.
Well, I think he'd be a good fit under Jim Harbaugh's defensive scheme.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the big thing with him is he went from being a rotational guy in the SEC at TAMU. They get Nick Scourton, who's projected day 1, day 2 in the portal, so Diggs comes to Syracuse. So he was good in the SEC, but not great. He's got ideal traits at 6'5", 260, runs something like a 4.59, which is crazy. And I think the athleticism there, while I think he's a day 3 pick, probably closer to the 5th round, I think he could surprise some people. And we got to talk about the elephant in the room, right? We all know who the elephant is? McCord?
Oh, I mean, yeah, but what do you want to say?
He's projected day 3 right now, pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, this one said that he was actually going to go to Cardinals in round 5, which I think, is that going to happen? I don't know, but that's pretty interesting, my Cardinals. But anyways, last thoughts, LaQuint Allen, where do you think he's going to go before we head to the break?
I could see him being like a Pacheco type. Remember, Isaiah Pacheco, and he went to where I went to undergrad at Rutgers. Undervalued running back Pacheco was out of the 7th round. Kansas City scooped him up. I wouldn't be surprised if a contender grabs him to come off the bench or in a scenario where if one of a team's starting running backs get hurt, he can come in and fill that need. But
Allen has better measurables than Pacheco did, I think, at the combine. Good pass catcher, better than Pacheco, arguably. I could see Cleveland, and I could see Minnesota being a really good fit for him. And, if we're going to head to the break, then we don't have to touch on Kyle McCord maybe being the next Brock Purdy. But if you're going to take a 25-year-old out of Louisville who was less successful in the ACC and Tyler Schaaf over Kyle McCord, then I don't think you were watching much college football last year. And I think the scouts who are really in love with him right now need to do some serious soul searching because I think they're missing the mark here.
After this short 4-minute break, we'll be back with Syracuse lacrosse. You are listening to Newhouse Afternoon on ESPN 97.7. Watch us on Twitch at qsportstalk.com.
Thank you. Cool.
It actually annoys me, by the way, that McCord's getting day 3 looks, and you have Tyler Schaaf looking. Some people have him going 33rd. He's 25 and a half. He's got so many injuries, it's not even funny. He was on his 3rd school in 7 years.
Wow.
Well, why don't we talk to the Twitch chat here? What do you guys think? Did Kyle McCord prove that he deserves a spot on an NFL roster this season? I say unequivocally yes. I mean, he throwing for almost 5,000 yards. You take away the Pitt game, he was pretty spectacular, actually, all year long. Yeah. Syracuse had one of the best aerial attacks in the country.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. If it wasn't for the Pitt game, he'd probably be the third guy, like up there with Jackson Dart, honestly.
Jackson Dart also, and this is, kind of something that also bothers me. Dart did throw a number of very, very bad picks against Florida last year at the end of the SEC season. I actually don't mention that because Florida's my school. I mentioned that because Ole Miss was in the playoff hunt, and they had a really good defense. They got multiple guys on that front who are, I think 3 of them who are going to be top 100 picks. They have a receiver who's going to be a top 100 pick. They have a linebacker who's going to be a top 100 pick. They had a lot of talent.
Yeah.
But when the going got tough, Jackson Dart threw 2 of the worst interceptions that I've ever seen.
Yeah, and that's what it matters in the pros, like what you do in those when the going gets tough moments.
And he doesn't go through his reads because he's never been in a pro-style offense. It's not that I don't think he can learn. I think he's a gifted athlete, and I think he really could be something. But where he is right now and where he needs to be, it's not there yet. And with McCord, we've already seen him beat Cam Ward.
Yeah.
That Pitt game where they just couldn't do anything, that's because Nate Matlock and that Panthers defensive line had Syracuse offensive line. They had the number.
Yeah, one really quick. We have someone in the chat saying that they do think McCord will get a shot in the NFL. I am curious to hear from you and from anybody else where most likely he will end up getting that shot. It is realistic that perhaps he doesn't start this year. He might not start for a couple years if he, gets on a contending team. But, where's this place in the NFL right now? He could actually go and compete for a spot to see the field this season. My pick is the Browns. I really think the Browns because he and Kevin Stefanski had a good relationship at the Combine. They had good talks. McCord said it himself.
Same high school, right?
I think so. I just feel like the Browns. I mean, the Browns, they don't even have a horrible roster. They do need to build up the offensive line, and they don't have a quarterback. And they need a pro-style quarterback. I think McCord could be that guy.
I think they're going to go with Shove because of his age and experience. I don't think that's the right decision, but I think they've spent a lot of time with Shove in the pre-draft process. I think Fran Brown already told us where McCord's going when he compared him, and this drew some laughs, and it should have. But I liked the general philosophy of what he was saying when he compared him to Brady. I think McCord lands in Vegas, 4th or 5th round. I think he lands in Vegas. Yes, I think he's going to back up Geno Smith. I think
you think they get rid of O'Connell?
You might roster 3 quarterbacks, and to be honest, I don't know that O'Connell's done enough to earn his spot on an NFL roster. What has he done?
That's fair, but he started a good amount of games for the Raiders last year. He knows the system. Granted, the system is changing.
How did those games go, though?
The system is changing.
It's mediocre. He was better than Gardner Minshew, though.
Oh, he was better than Gardner Minshew?
Which is surprising, because Gardner Minshew, even though he doesn't have the wins to back it up, he has one of the best numbers in the league. 37 touchdowns, 11 picks.
I like Gardner Minshew. I think that was
he puts up great numbers in losses.
That was a reflection on Vegas. I think Kansas City made a huge upgrade at backup quarterback.
Only got 2 minutes, guys.
With Gardner Minshew?
A huge upgrade over Wentz. Wentz is not.
Wentz is now a free agent?
Yeah, same as Trey Lance. They'll both be playing this. Lance actually has been tendered by a CFL team, but I think Wentz, if he plays next year, could be in the CFL.
Thank you. Poor Trey Lance, though. Oof.
.com. Tomorrow's broadcasting stars today. Broadcasting live from the campus of Syracuse University. This is Newhouse Afternoon.
Welcome back to Newhouse Afternoon on ESPN 97.7 and on QSportsTalk.com. We're just going to touch a little bit on Syracuse lacrosse before the end of the show here. Syracuse lacrosse absolutely rolling, 6 consecutive wins and a big-time win against the 5th-ranked team in the nation, Notre Dame, and a great test coming up Saturday against the number 1 team in the nation, Cornell.
Yeah, no, I think Syracuse is the best when they play fast, they find their spots, and they have good spacing across the field. That's what they had against Notre Dame. They're going to need that against Cornell, especially because Cornell is a physical team, and they usually tend to get more shots off and are very good at their shot defense. So Syracuse really needs to do well with their spacing.
42-14. That's the number of minutes that Syracuse held Notre Dame without a goal after going down 3-0 in the first 4. They went on a 9-0 run against the two-time defending national champion, Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
Peyton Anderson, the freshman out of Hopewell Junction, New York, 6'3". He uses all of his size. He creates off the dodge really well. He opened that scoring on the 9-0 run. He can slide to X, which allows Joey Spallina, to play above the Golden Pipes. I think they're going to beat Cornell in dominant fashion, and they're going to pick up a lot of recruits that way
take.
on Long Island. It's a trip home for Spallina, and Cornell is going to have a rough trip back.
Well, this is a loaded roster. Owen Hiltz, Joey Spallina, Sam English, just generational talent all around. This is a team that can compete in the NCAA tournament. That'll do it for this episode of Newhouse Afternoon. The Sports Show with Cody Mack is next.
The Sports Show with Cody Mack.